Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Memorial Day is this weekend. And as you know, it's not just a time for vacation, but a time to reflect on and honor the brave men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice while serving this great country of ours. Heroes who risked everything to protect our freedom. And our guest today is a man who did exactly that. Dakota Meyer is a U.S. Marine who served in Iraq and Afghanistan. In 2009, during the Battle of Ganjgal, Dakota defied orders to storm into an ambush of our guys in an effort to save his friends. He repeatedly entered a valley with more than 50 Taliban fighters shooting at him from 3 different sides to bring both American and Afghan soldiers to safety. He is credited with saving 36 lives that day in acts of bravery so incomprehensible in their scope that 60 Minutes later reported on them as follows.
I have never seen the like. That's what a helicopter pilot who had watched a 21-year-old Marine stave off a Taliban ambush that threatened to overrun his unit told us.
We interviewed a number of pilots who were there that day, and several of them stopped in mid-sentence, unable to finish their description of Meyer's actions that day. They just didn't have the words to describe it.
Dakota was awarded the Medal of Honor, the highest honor in the military, by President Obama for his bravery. But the road forward for Dakota has not been without its challenges. He is an example of what it means to sacrifice in the name of country, to pick oneself up no matter how hard one falls. An example of what it means to be a man and a Marine. Dakota, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. I have been looking forward to this since the last time.
Me too. I actually lived in fear to see the email come in like, Dakota wound up being busy. Dakota can't do it. I'm so happy that it actually is happening.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. How are you?
I'm great. I'm so great. And just more enamored with you and your character than ever. You know, one of the privileges of interviewing a guy like you is I get to spend tons of time immersed in your story, you know, reading your books and just boning up on the details. And it's just breathtaking. And I know it's not always easy to go through, especially the details of a story like yours. So I'm honored that you've agreed to do it with me and my audience, especially on a day like this. So thanks again. Okay, let's start back with little Dakota Meyer. Little baby Dakota Meyer was born to a teenage mama who didn't know all that much about how to mother a young baby. And while your dad was never really part of the picture at all, there was a man who would become critical to your life, your character development, and who you would become. And tell us about how your mom got connected with him and who he was.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I don't really know how. I mean, I know it sounds weird. I don't really know the story of how they got divorced, when they got divorced, or anything like that. I just know that, you know, the man that I call my dad today, he I guess he adopted me at some point before they had gotten divorced. And he was married to my mother. And then after they split up or whatever happened, then I still stayed living with my mom, but I was with my dad, you know, like I guess they call it expanded standard custody now. Like I would see him every other Wednesday and on the weekends. And, you know, life with my mom was chaotic growing up. I don't blame my mom for anything. My mom, I'll say this, my mom did the best that she could with me. I could not imagine having a child when I was 17. And you know, I carry a lot of guilt, or I feel bad that, you know, I probably changed the trajectory of her life. Right. And, but I was just so fortunate to have this man, you know, in the books we call him Big Mike, but, you know, to me, he's dad and just a man who, you know, it's hard enough to raise your own kids, right? It's hard enough to show up and do and be the man that they need and to be that and just to choose somebody else's responsibility is just, it's such a testament to the man and the character that he is.
It is. Big Mike he's quite a guy. Adopted you and raised you as his own. And when she got to the point of saying, you know what, I think it's better if you just take him, he said, welcome home and take you. He did. Now, this is all down in, I know you're born in Columbia, Kentucky. Is that where you were living for your upbringing?
Yeah, so I grew up on a farm. It's kind of in the middle between there's Columbia, Kentucky, and Greensburg, Kentucky, and we literally live on the line of that. And I grew up on a farm with, like I said, my dad and my grandparents. And yeah, I mean, when my mom finally just said, "Hey, you can take him," it was over the summer of I think I started the fifth grade. I started the fifth grade living with my dad, and my mom called. I'll never forget that phone call, and it was just such a relief to be able to stay with my dad and be over there and yeah, just stay with him from that point on.
Then did you have an ongoing relationship with your mom after that?
I think she kind of like disappeared for a little bit, and then she'd dodge back into life, and I'd see her. She lived up in Louisville, and so it was obviously a long drive, and then I would I'd go see her whenever there was time or she had time. So I'd see her, on the weekends sometimes. But she after I moved out from being with her, as far as like I never really seen her. It was never really like a mother-son relationship from that point on.
And so you become a good old Kentucky farm boy, and Big Mike is tough in a loving way. But I think he's sort of the guy who made a man out of you before you got to the Marines. And I love the stories about, how he instilled that in you, just sort of tough love, but definitely both pieces of that were present. He was tough, but he was loving. So we talked about this a little bit the last time about Tinkerbell, but when you look back on sort of the lessons that he taught you and sort of the character development that he did of you, what jumps out?
My dad is, I think the best way to put it, and I know this is used a lot loosely, but my dad is unapologetically him, right? And there's something to be said about that. My dad, criticize how he lives his life. You can critique that. You can critique how he handles himself or whatever, presents himself, or how he delivers things. But my dad lives life on his own terms. And my dad, I know one thing that he instilled in me growing up was, we're not going to try to keep up with the fads or in school, and especially in a small town, there's a lot of cliques. And, there's a lot of social statuses or your last name or, what you wear, or, all that. It's especially growing up is as a factor of where you stand in the social status. And my dad didn't care. My dad cared about you doing the right thing. And the thing that I really just, I'm more and more aware of every single day is the honor that they had with our name, right? Like, when we die, it doesn't matter what you have, and it doesn't matter what how much money you made, and none of that stuff matters. But the last thing that people will remember is your last name. It's on your tombstone, and keeping that clean and keeping that honorable is something that my dad's always done. My dad's he was all about being fair. He was all about doing what you say you're going to do. He was all about, accountability. These are all factors that my dad instilled in me. And it wasn't something that he taught just by pointing it at you. It was something my dad taught you by the way he lived his life and the way that my grandfather lived his life and my grandmother lived her life. And these were all things that were very important. And these were non-negotiables. These were principles that were instilled in our family that were not. These were there was no give on those.
Mm-hmm. So what were you like as a boy? Were you a little rascal, or how were you? I was a handful, right? I'll say this. I was never put in handcuffs. Okay,
so
check.
I had that going for me. But I think I was your typical high school student, right? I played sports. I was, I was always out getting into stuff. I definitely tried to toe the line. If you're not living on the edge, you're taking up too much space, right? So, I was always into something. I was always into pushing the limits on everything that I could. But I think that's, again, back to my dad's raising, he let me figure life out on my own, right? As long as I wasn't going to hurt somebody else and I wasn't putting myself in danger, like kind of figure it out. My dad, he was a single dad raising me, which just is a whole other factor, right? And imagine doing that. Imagine doing that when you didn't have this technology of cell phones, of locations, and we had none of that.
Yeah.
And just going out and riding four-wheelers, living on a farm, running tractors, cutting hay, doing all these things, but doing it, figuring life out on my own a little bit, having my left and right lateral limits of to be able to get through these challenges and to be able to face these obstacles and have to think on my own and not have someone over my shoulder protecting me every single, every inch of the way. And that's, yeah, I mean, so I was always into something, always
But that's amazing. I mean, we just interviewed Jonathan Haidt on the program. Haidt, it's spelled hate, but it's pronounced Haidt. And he wrote The Coddling of the American Mind, and he was talking about how we have to stop with the helicopter parenting. We have to start raising independent thinkers and kids who understand the value in taking risks and just know in their hearts that they can do something new because they've done it time and time again without a parent leaning over their shoulder watching them. We're not doing that anymore. And Big Mike did not need that lesson in parenting. He was living it.
Yeah, I mean, and I just don't think that my dad could have done it, right? I mean, he didn't have the capabilities to do it. My dad worked, 60 hours a week at his full-time job, and then he came home and he worked another 40 to 60 on the farm. And my dad, that's what he did. I mean, that was a way of life. And so there was no time to, it was a team effort around the house, right? Like, you had to pull your weight because there was so many things that needed to get done. And that was just kind of how we lived. And so with that comes responsibility, and it comes growing up. And I'm thankful that my dad lived like that way. I'm thankful that my dad, instilled those values in me, because that's the difference between me and the generation that had someone helicopter piloting or, helicopter parenting over them. It taught me these critical skills to be able to think past what someone tells me to do or to just, follow the leader.
But it's also, you're not just different from the generation that followed you. You're just different from everyone, because the vast majority of people, even a lot of Marines, would not have done exactly what you did and have taken so many risks repeatedly that endangered your life. I mean, no disparagement to the Marines whatsoever. I'm just saying, there's a reason you were only, I think, the second Marine to receive the Medal of Honor since 1974. I mean, it's not that extraordinary acts of bravery hadn't preceded you. It's just that yours were really extraordinary. And so part of what's interesting to me is how does one raise a Dakota Meyer? How does one build a Dakota Meyer? What happened in your childhood? Was it, we could get totally psychological. Was it your feeling of abandonment by your biological dad or your mom? Or was there some benefit to being sort of shuffled around under her wing when she was going sort of from place to place? Was it all Big Mike? Was it life on the farm? Do you have any insight into what made you the way you are?
Well, I think one aspect of it is I don't know, obviously, my dad kept me safe, right? By no means was I ever in any harm, but I never had anybody take up for me. So I had to figure it out on my own, right? I mean, I can remember these two guys in elementary school that just tortured me. I mean, literally growing up, especially in middle school. I mean, I thought Goodwill was a brand, right? I mean, I didn't know. I mean, I grew up in a trailer park, right? So I mean, that's kids like that get made fun of, and you got a choice to make, and it just that pain of not understanding why someone is making fun of you, especially at that age, right? Why someone is looking down on you, or why someone is making you feel this way. And then I think that what happens is I go to my dad's and I watch my dad stand up for what's right. My dad was always about standing up for what's right. Right? Like, you don't compromise on right. There is a right and there is a wrong with everything. You don't compromise right for wrong at any stance, and it doesn't matter what the cost is. And my grandfather was a Marine, and that man was, he was about accountability. And I just think that, I think you add all those aspects up, and then growing up on a farm, and the whole thing about having a farm is these living creatures come before you. I mean, we had cattle, we had all these responsibilities, and all that came first. It didn't matter whether it was raining, it didn't matter whether it was comfortable, it didn't matter whether it was early, it didn't matter whether it was Christmas, it didn't matter whether it was your birthday. They all still needed taken care of. And so I think you put all these factors together about putting others before you, even though it's animals. I mean, animals matter. I mean, animals, they're whether on a farm, it's your livelihood sometimes, right? And they rely on you, and just growing up in these environments, and I think that you turn that into not wanting other people to hurt, right? I can't stand when someone else hurts. Like, I can't stand when they get picked on. I can't stand, I hate bullies. I hate when and I don't know if you call it the weaker person, right? I hate the weaker person, but when when the less fortunate or whatever it is person gets picked on for no reason, that I don't like that. And I feel like I was fortunate enough to have a big Mike in my life that taught me how to stand up, and that demanded that I would stand up for not only myself, but for what was right. And I think that, all that combined together is just something that I can empathize with people who are hurting, and I want to help people who are hurt, who are hurting, not hurt anymore.
So you're independent. You learn to take risks and deal with the consequences. You hate bullies, and you were taught to do the right thing, no matter the consequences. And so we're seeing it. We're kind of seeing it come together, even if I'm sure you were not seeing the man being built while it's being built, right? You're just a kid. You're a kid in Kentucky, and you're sort of doing what's expected of you. And then the next thing you know, there's a guy, I think, at your high school behind a little recruiting table telling you, you cannot do it. You cannot become a Marine. You don't have it.
He told me, he said, I didn't even really know what the Marine Corps was. My grandfather was in the Korean War, and I never heard him talk about it. I mean, I knew I'd seen, which I know now is an NCO sword. I mean, I'd seen that. I'd seen, a little, glimpses here and there, like a picture of a plane. And I never knew what it meant, right? I didn't even know what the Marine Corps was. And I was walking through my lunchroom one day. Walking through the lunchroom one day. And I don't know what it was. It just, I thought I was going to go to college. I mean, that's what everybody does where I'm from. Like, you go to college until you either graduate or you run out of your parents' money. And then you come back home and you either work on the farm or you just get some job back in town. And that's kind of where you're at, right? The Marine was there, and I went up to his table and started talking to him at lunch, and just, we talked a little bit, and he's like, what are you going to do when you get out of high school? And I puffed my chest up, and I was like, well, I'm going to go play football somewhere. And he's like, yeah, that's what I would do too. There's no way you'd ever make it as a Marine. And I think that like for a lot of us that are Marines or serve in the military or whatever, it's about the challenge, right? It's about the challenge to accept it, and that's what the Marine did. He accepted. He laid the challenge out there. I left that evening, I left that day to go sign up. Signed up. My dad came in and had no clue what I was doing. My dad thought I was going to college, and then now I'm telling him I'm going to the Marine Corps, and signed up for infantry, and that was kind of it. Like, I left my hometown after finishing up the school year, and I actually spent my 18th birthday inside boot camp.
Wow. Now what was that,
2006.
2006, yeah, because you say you were 13 when we were attacked on 9/11. Okay, so 2006, you sign up, you go. I love this from This is from your first book, where you write Into the Fire, where you write, "So it began, the close haircuts to strip away your old identity, exercises to prove you're not half as strong as you figured, simple tasks that show you are mentally weak, drill instructors who mock your attempts to look tough. It's right out of the movies, but it never stops." I never thought about it all that way. Close haircuts to strip away your old identity, like trying to kind of break you down. They're trying to break you down, humble you, get everybody even, and then build you back up.
Yeah, I mean, boot camp is kind of like when after you're out of it and you start looking back at it. The Marine Corps got it figured out, right? Like, one of the things that I think the Marine Corps does better than any other branch is they teach the history. They teach, they spend I look at it like this, it's 10 to 12 weeks. So let's say 12 weeks. So they spend the first month, breaking you down, taking away your identity. And then they spend the next 4 weeks teaching you about the history, about the battles, about the men before you who had this title Marine, and they build this sense of pride, about that and about what the Marine Corps truly is. And then they spend the last 4 weeks teaching you how to live up and how to live with honor and go out and represent and do that. And so just such an incredible process, transformation. I can't say that it definitely wasn't the hardest school that I'd gone to while I was in the Marine Corps, but it was by far the most transforming, life-changing school that I'd ever gone to, as far as like changing up the whole dynamic of how you think, about how you see things, and obviously, preparing you for war.
Well, that's how I felt when I did my 2 days becoming a Marine at Camp Lejeune for TV.
Yeah. I bet it was probably the same thing.
Totally identical. I did not, however, get the tattoo in Latin on my chest. Can you tell us what you opted for and why you put it in Latin?
So I get asked this a lot. The funny story is I went in and I became a sniper and I wanted to get this. I'd seen this tattoo somewhere. I don't know where. And I was maybe 19 years old. And I went into this. I lived in Hawaii and I went to this tattoo parlor and I said, "Hey, I want to get this tattoo on my chest that says 'Your death is my life' in Latin." Or no, I didn't say in Latin. I said English. And, thank God for the tattoo artist who looked at me and said, "Hey, man, like, I'll do whatever you want, right, because you're paying for it, but I really would not get it in English." And he said, "Why don't you get it in Latin?" He's like, "Man, like, can you imagine?" He's like, "You're walking across the beach with your kids one day and it says 'Your death is my life' across your chest." And I was like, I mean, at that point, I was like, "I'm never having kids. You kidding me? Like, what? That'll never happen." And so I'm really thankful that I got that in Latin.
Yeah, it's one thing if you're in Afghanistan. It's quite another if you're in your personal life without your Marine gear on. So your death is my life, which actually is not a bad message when you're staring down the Taliban. So I like that. Okay, so there you go. And off you go. You went to Iraq, and Iraq first, right? And then Afghanistan after?
Yeah, I went to Iraq first. So I was in Fallujah, and I was part of the surge, right, in 2007. When we surged all the troops.
That was a rough time.
Yeah. I mean, look, for us, like, the Iraq deployment was pretty easy. I mean, we took some mortars and stuff, maybe a little bit of small arms fire, but nothing, like, it was not crazy at all in Iraq. And, I was only there for maybe 45 days, 30 to 45 days, due to, I got bit on my right hand by a spider. I had nerve damage. Like, I had 2 surgeries in Fallujah surgical.
What?
And then, like, I actually lost like all the movement in my last 3 fingers. So yeah.
What kind of spider was that? Can you just spend 1 second on that? Because now everybody's going to be freaked out about the next spider they encounter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what kind it was. I mean, they said something like a desert recluse. So I guess maybe it's I don't know. Who knows? It sounds made up. But they sent me back to Germany, and I was in Germany. Like, I had to go to occupational therapy to get my hands moving again. I honestly thought I was going to get med-sepped out of the Marine Corps, and I just worked on my hands the rest of the deployment, being back home. And I mean, I don't even remember it. We were actually out in a house, And I do remember the mission, though, because we had ran this mission to a place called Banana Town, and we were going to go out there for a couple of days and just trying to see. We knew there was some enemy that they've been freely moving out there, and so we had gone out, set up in this house, and it turned into a mess right off. We only stayed there for a night because. So basically, when we come in and we would take over these houses, what we would do is we would sneak in the middle of the night, right? And so usually the families would sleep outside. And so they'd be sleeping out on the ground somewhere. So we'd find them. We'd have like a couple guys just watching them as they sleep while we went in and like we'd search the house and we'd make sure we'd get eyes on the position we wanted. And then we'd wait until they woke up and then we'd bring them inside and they had to sit with us until we left. And so this night, I remember, I don't know what caused it, but like there's so many dogs in Iraq and or Afghanistan, but there was just a ton of dogs. And I remember the dogs barking so much that that it woke the neighbors up. And so once they seen us, we had to go grab them as well. And so then it woke the other neighbors up and woke the other neighbors up. And so like 32 people, like almost the entire village inside of this one house with us, but we couldn't let them go because we were afraid they'd go tell Al-Qaeda or whoever that was there where we were at. So we had to hold on to them until that night. And then that night we bailed out. But I got bit on my hand and got back to base and like my hand was just swollen up. It was huge. I couldn't move my 3 fingers. They did a surgery in Fallujah, gave me a few days to heal. It didn't heal back. Did another surgery, and then they medevaced me out back home to the States.
Yeah, it's a problem if you're a sniper. You need your hands, you need your fingers, and they need to be in good working order. Okay, so you get deployed again to Afghanistan. And is it with the same unit? You know, the guys who we would come to know through your story in, forgive me, the pronunciation's weird. How do you pronounce the town?
Ganjgal.
Ganjgal. Is it the same unit that you were deployed with in Iraq?
No. So like I came back, went to mountain sniper school in between deployments, and I became a sniper team leader. So I actually had my own team, and we were getting ready to head back to Iraq again, like in the 2009 timeframe. But, you know, there really wasn't much going on in Iraq at that point. We didn't even have a mission. And so I remember we were at 29 Palms and my gunny comes and says, "Hey, look, we need 5 volunteers to go to Afghanistan." And I said, "What's the mission going to be?" And he said, "Well, I don't really know, but like we just need 5 volunteers. So you all can either start volunteering or I'm going to start picking." And so I raised my hand. You know, I knew that was where the fight was. I mean, that's what we've been hearing. That's where we'd all hoped to have gone. And I just thought it might be an opportunity to go get in a fight. And you know, I was right, obviously. And so ended up going, and I detached from my sniper unit, and I went and attached to what's called an embedded training team. And so the mindset behind these embedded training teams are that we go over and advise the local army, the Afghan National Army, on how to do everything from logistics to weapons training to basically train them on how to build their own military up. You know, the theory is that if we can train them up, then they can do it themselves, and then they take care of their own country, right? But we see how that ended up. And so that was our job. And so I was stationed on a base with 4 U.S. and 80 Afghans on this base in Afghanistan.
So let's talk a bit about the guys who are at the center of this story. In the book, you refer to Doc Layton, our corpsman, and that's Corpsman James Layton. Let's start with him. How did you get to know him? What was he like?
You know, Doc Layton. You know, look, corpsmen are the angels of the Marine Corps. I mean, these are the guys who literally put their life on the line. Yeah, they're Navy corpsmen, and but they're. I mean, what docs do is second to none for Marines. I mean, these guys take care of us. They patch us up on the battlefield, you know, and they're right there with us, right? Their primary job is to patch us up, but like, you know, look, they're in the fight with us. And you know, Doc Layton was such a good guy. You know, he was from he was from California, and he was from California. He had this like surfer attitude, this smile, this smirk he had. It very like introvert, but just had these one-liners, and didn't say a lot. Didn't really like. It was just laid back. Did not care. You couldn't bother him, and just very laid back. And
okay.
he always called me dude, and had long hair, and just just such an incredible guy.
And then there was Sergeant Aaron Kennefic, Gunnery Sergeant Aaron Kennefic, a New Yorker.
Yeah.
Tell us about him.
Yeah. So, Gunny Kennefic was like, look, I'm from Kentucky. I mean, obviously, even Rob O'Neill says, I kind of talk slow. And, I'm from Kentucky, and like, we live life different than New York. And, so when I first met Gunny Kennefic, and he was the old man of the team, I think he was like 30 at the time, which is crazy. But, he's an old man of the team. He was a gunny. He had this, like, I called it the New York chip on his shoulder, he had that attitude, right? And just a good guy. And look, me and Gunny when we first got there, like, we didn't get along. Like, he couldn't stand that. I mean, I was a sniper, right? And look, we're known for not really caring much about how we look and looking good and looking the part. We care about doing the job. And, look, both are important, but he was more on what we call the flagpole side, and I was more on the field side. And he didn't like it. He didn't like how nasty I was, which I'm not saying he was wrong. But we butted heads a lot. And, it's kind of crazy how the relationship progressed and how close we were, right before he got killed.
Yeah, and I know you say he had movie star good looks.
He did.
You can see that in the pictures. Yeah, he was like had sort of the broad shoulders and the good sized head and the jawline and all of that. Yeah. So you were ultimately in a good place together, which you write about, having a couple of close calls that worked to your advantage. Sergeant Edwin Johnson, tell us about Edwin.
So Gunny Johnson. So he was on. So we were part of a 21-man team, and they split that up into, teams that are throughout the area of operations that we were part of, and that's why I broke down into a 4-man team with Kennefic and them. And so Gunny Johnson's actually the person who replaced me that day on the mission. Gunny Johnson's such an incredible guy. Like, he loved CrossFit. He was always working out. Just a jacked up guy. He had like the softest voice. Like, if you've seen him, like, you're like, oh, yeah, this guy's got a deep voice. But, like, he just this huge guy, had the soft voice, and just such a loving, caring guy. And, was definitely a guy that took care of Marines and just really, really nice guy.
Mm-hmm. And is he the one who's from Virginia? He said he was from Virginia by birth, but was now Mr. Oregon?
No, there was Gunny Johnson and Lieutenant Johnson. So Lieutenant Johnson, the next one.
Okay, yeah. So Lieutenant Johnson was Lieutenant Michael Johnson, and he's the guy in your book you write about how he was in tremendous shape, and at sunset would muster us out for 100 push-ups, 200 sit-ups, and 10 laps around the perimeter, which made me think, avoid Lieutenant Michael Johnson at all costs if it's sunset.
Yeah, he loved CrossFit too, right? Just such a laid-back guy. We were definitely opposites, right? I mean, I was wound tight. I still probably am a little bit. And, Lieutenant Johnson was just, like an example of him was that we would be going on these missions. And, Afghanistan, where we were at, northeastern Afghanistan, is very, very hilly. It's very, the terrain is just incredible. And so we would be going, and he'd be like, Meyer, like, don't you just love like the views, right? And I was like, I was in the front. I was like, sir, I'm not really looking at the views. I'm trying to make sure we don't get blown up. And it was just always how laid back and positive he was, and just he was just every patrol for Lieutenant Johnson was for sure a nature hike.
Wow. And well, look, he's appreciating the sunset. He's from Oregon. The Pacific Northwest is sort of like that. It's beautiful. They appreciate the beauty. It's nice to get to know these guys a little. It's like you hear these news stories and you just hear about the awful end, and it's so much just a such a better experience for everyone, I'm sure, including their loved ones, if you can just get to know these guys a little bit and figure out what made all of you so close, what made all of you click, what made it such a special unit. September 8, 2009. Okay, so you are told... A Tuesday. You are told that there's been some progress in meeting with, I guess, tribal leaders there, and that we're going to send some guys back in to go try to have some talks. And we decide, I guess, we, the Americans, decide to send some of our Afghan representatives, our Afghan friends, to go in there. And were you guys going, especially these four, to protect them?
So it's all about the optics of it, right? Part of the strategy was trying to build the confidence in the Afghan National Army, right? Obviously supported by us.
Right.
So that's kind of the optics of it, right? Like, that piece. And so, what had happened is there had been some tiff, and I wasn't even aware of this. I mean, we get rocketed all the time, bombed all the time. And plus this was another base. So we weren't even aware of it, but I guess like somebody got killed, and long story short, the Ganjgal people had said that they wanted to renounce themselves from the Taliban. And so this is huge, right? I mean, look, in theory, again, I like to say in theory, I say it a lot, but like in theory, if they renounce themselves from the Taliban, it stops the freedom of movement from the Taliban. They start supporting the government. This is a textbook of how it shouldn't play out. So what we were doing that day is we were going to go in, and we were just having literally a town meeting that we do all the time. We have meetings with our locals all the time, and we were going to go in and have a town meeting and just go in there and see how we could support them. They said they needed support. They would renounce themselves from the Taliban as long as we could provide some security. I'm sure they wanted, who knows what they wanted, right? Like probably a school, some roads or whatever, right? And so they just needed some support for the government, and they would start supporting the government. And so that was kind of what our mission was that day.
Summer's right around the corner, and Genucel is celebrating early with their summer clearance sale. Save over 60% on Genucel's most popular package at Genucel.com. If you order today, you will get Genucel's Dark Spot Corrector, which visibly reduces those pesky sunspots for free. Here's yet another Genucel success story. Cynthia in Arlington, Virginia writes, "After using these products, my husband said to me, 'Wow, you look younger. Whatever you're doing, it's working.' He didn't know I had started using Genucel. I like the texture and how the smell is not too strong. Their products are easy to use and great for my sensitive skin. I've tried expensive products, and Genucel is the best. The results are real, and that's why millions of Americans are in love. Genucel guarantees results or your money back. Sign up for Genucel's best-in-class rewards program at checkout for an extra 10% off your order, and you'll get a complimentary gift set. Go to Genucel.com/MK60 for 60% off. That's GENUCEL.com/MK60. Right now, their most popular package includes a free gift. So go to Genucel.com/MK60, Genucel.com/MK60. Okay, so you go, and you were supposed to be one of the leading four guys, as you point out. Instead, Sergeant Aaron Kennefic, Sergeant Edwin Johnson went in your stead. You were low man on the totem pole, so why did that happen? Why did he replace you? So
I'll say on this patrol, I was the only infantryman. So let me start with that, right? And nothing against it, but I mean, this was part of what we did for a living, right? And so going in, I listened to the mission brief the night before, and part of the brief was that there was a few pieces of it that I didn't agree with, and one of them being that we were going to be on, everybody was going to be on one radio channel, right? And I'm going to say these because I think that I think it's important that these are kind of simple. I'm not trying to change up the wheel, or reinvent the wheel, but there was going to be over, if I count up just off the top of my head, 4, 5, 6, at least 6 or 7 different moving elements on one radio channel, right? Imagine having 6 or 7 different people on a phone call, right? I think we all know how that goes. And then I said that wasn't a good idea. And then I said another aspect was I wanted to bring the trucks in, right? So like when they walked in, they wanted to walk in, which to show a softer presence, but they also gave me the excuse that they wanted to go in clandestine, but you can't do that with 90 people, which was a dumb comment anyways. And so for me, like, I thought it made sense to bring the trucks in behind the team, so that way if they got set up, then, or not set up, but if they took contact or got into a gunfight, then we would have our biggest guns in the fight, right? And there would be armor there, and it would just provide more reinforcements that we already had. They didn't want to do that either. And then the other aspect of it was the air, and like, we didn't have air direct, which happens sometimes, but I just didn't think that it was a smart idea to go in here without air direct in a place that we knew we were going to take contact at. We had never. I think the other teams had gone in there once or twice before, and every time they get shot at, right? And so because of these factors, they end up just taking me out of the team.
So you had to stay, did you have to stay back at base then?
No, so like my job was going to be that when we drove in, they left me at the trucks, right?
So you're
like
off campus. You're not back at base, but you're off campus and you're not in the middle of the action.
I'm probably a mile away.
Okay. And how many of you are there in your spot?
There was 3 of us.
Okay. But the commanding officers, they're back at the base.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, well, yeah. So the commanding officers, we're back at the base. We had a major and our first sergeant with us, our team leaders. They were there, like the whole team, team CEO or whatever. So they were with us. But as far as like the Army, so we were supported because in this area, this was the Army's area of operation. So everything we did as far as everything was supported from the Army, as far as air, as far as artillery, as far as even quick reaction force was supplied by the Army. So we relied on them a lot. And so all these, but the top commanding officers were for sure sitting on base.
So you're sitting there and you got to be a little nervous because obviously just given the circumstances. And then I know somebody kept saying bad people looking into the city and where these guys were going. Bad place, bad people. It's low ground, which is, as you explained, not where you want to be if you're in the military. You always want to be up on the higher ground so you can see everything and not the lower ground. God forbid somebody hits you. You can be seen very easily. And yet this is what was arranged, and this was what was asked of you, and off they go. And so how long are you waiting before you realize it's an ambush?
Well, I'll never forget, so like that morning going in, so we drove in, and I was in the turret, the up gun. Gunny
just explain that.
Driving.
Sorry, Dakota. Just explain what that is for our audience.
Yeah, so I was in the turret. So like basically the armored, the gun that's on top of the Humvee, right? So I was up there. I was manning that position on the way in, and then Gunny Johnson was driving. Lieutenant Johnson was in the passenger seat. Doc Layton was in the back seat, and then our interpreter Fazel was in the other back seat. And like obviously this is hindsight's 2020, right? But like driving in, I remember that morning we didn't even talk about the mission. Usually on a mission like this, we're talking about checkpoints, we're talking about plans, and we didn't even mention it. All we talked about on the way in that morning was home. And all we talked about was like whose house we were going to first and how we were going to hang out, and kind of like, I don't know, we laid out this whole elaborate life plan of how we were going to find a way to still be together and hang out. And I look back at it, and it's like, that's what we do when we're scared, right? A lot of people look at service members or military as crude or as heartless. But when in these team situations, especially small team situations that are so critical, part of getting through them is having the ultimate poker face, right? Like you can't, these guys might be looking at you wondering, hey, should I be scared or not? And you don't want to ever, you don't ever want to show you're scared, because it might be what breaks or makes that team. And so having confidence and being able to control those emotions and staying stoic in these situations is what has to happen. And so a lot of times what we do is we just have conversations about stuff that don't even, kind of try to ignore it, right?
Sure.
That whole way in, you could just tell that everybody was scared. Everybody knew what was about to happen, that it was not going to be good. And so we got in and parked that morning, and it was still pitch black. And I remember we parked, and he Kennefic shut the truck off. And Lieutenant Johnson, I told Lieutenant Johnson, I said, hey, look, if anything goes bad, just get to the road, and I'll come get you. And, so that was the plan. And Kennefic said, or not Kennefic, but Lieutenant Johnson said, he goes, Meyer, you know what, that's what we're going to do. And he goes, I know you're crazy enough to come get us. And I'll never forget, Kennefic got out, and it was pitch black, and he started walking. And he said, Meyer, I'll see you on the flip side. And, they all walked off into the dark. And it was probably, as they were going in, there were goat herders passing us, right? Like there were the elders. A lot of the elders were passing us. And I would get off the truck. I got on the hood of the truck, and I would go down and I'd try to shake their hands and stuff, just to try to have a conversation. You can tell a lot about how people view you by just a conversation, right? And a lot of these people wouldn't even talk to us. Like they just look at us. Now, I'll never forget, they were taking their rosary beads or whatever it was, and they were just like holding them and holding on. And it was just you just had this eerie feeling, and like women and kids were just leaving like masses. And, we knew that there was going to be a fight, right? They're not just leaving because, it's not a coincidence.
Well, wait. But let me stop you there. How did you, like I see, these are signs that there's going to be a fight, but we didn't actually know because we were caught by surprise. That was part of the problem, right? So explain that. What do you mean?
Well, I mean, look, this is I'm saying like all these signs are stuff we've seen before, right? Like, when they're preparing for a fight, like this is stuff that we've seen before. So
these guys have gone in, they've left you, they're going in, and you're seeing these signs and you're thinking, I have a bad feeling.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And but even before this aspect of it, I took my thermals, like, it's a heat seeking device, right? It seeks heat, it sees heat, or it senses heat. And I could see people running up the edges of the mountains. And, look, they weren't going out to get their morning, their morning run in. And so, all these are signs that they're going up to their fighting positions, right? And I tried to call over the radio and said, hey, we got guys going up the side of the mountains. And I was told, get off the radio, you're tying up the net, right? It was like a push on me of like, hey, you brought up that this is going to be an issue, and now you're the one tying the net up. And it was just like so ignoring all the signs, so complacent is what it was. And, my team was at the front of the patrol on this 90-man patrol, right? You're kind of walking in. I don't want to say like follow the leader, but it is kind of like follow the leader, right? And, my team and my Afghans were up front of this patrol as they had them. Everybody else was dispersed out to the back. And, as soon as they got in there, it was just like all the lights in the village flipped off at the same time. And then it was just a fight. Like it was just a fight.
Oh my God. I can't imagine the feeling that goes through your body at that moment that you realize this whole thing has been a setup. You're on the outside. These guys in your unit are in the inside, and you must feel powerless in the moment or in something close to panic to get in there. You explain it. What is that feeling when you realize the whole thing's an ambush?
Well, I think in the beginning when this thing hit off, look, we'd been in quite a few gunfights at this point, right? Like in the beginning of it, like it's always chaotic. It's just, you're trying to figure out where they're at, and you're trying to do all this while you're getting shot at. So like they're trying, where they're at, where you're at, what do we have to help with this? And then you just, you start fighting. And so for me, I would say in the beginning, I wasn't worried about my team. Honestly, at the beginning, I was just pissed off that I wasn't involved in the fight, right? Like I was just mad that I wasn't, that they were getting some and I wasn't. You know what I mean? Like that was probably the first reason I was mad. And yeah, obviously I was eager to get in there. I wanted to go fight. I wanted to go get some, like I was mad my team was gonna, get some and I wasn't. And then after I started listening to the radio traffic, then it got real. I think it was at the point that I heard Lieutenant Johnson come over the radio, and he stated that that he needed a support artillery mission, and basically he gave this. It's a grid location, or no, not a grid location. He gave a polar mission, which is basically you say where you're at, you give your location, then you give the distance and direction of where you want these rounds at, and then they sling rounds on that location, right? And so he gave this perfect format, and I'll never forget. They said the rounds are too close to the village, and he said the village is shooting at us. Like, I need these rounds, and what he was trying to do is he was trying to place these rounds between him and the village, kind of building a wall. You know what I mean? Like trying to give him some relief to be able to disperse back and get out of there. And I'll never forget, he said, they said, no, it's too close to the village. Give us another location. He said, if you don't give me these rounds right now, we are going to die. And the response he got back was, well, try your best. And so at that point, I knew that we had to do something. I looked at Rodriguez Chavez, who was just such an incredible human being. He was a motor T guy. And I said, hey, Rod, like we got to go in. And so I requested 3 or 4 times over the radio to go in. And my idea was, hey, I'm going to bring this gun truck in and, you know what, like cover them as they leave. And each time I was told no. And so finally I just said, like, let's go.
Well, let me just back you up. Let me back you up there. So you say, we got to get in there. And you can hear these guys on the radio saying, send us support. We need our artillery support, and they needed helicopter support. And the helicopter support was promised and then not delivered. They said, we'll be there in 15 minutes. And they didn't send it. And that was overruled, as I understand it, back at the home base. And then they said, and these guys are insider. And I mean, 15 minutes has got to be an eternity when you're in their position. And it happened repeatedly.
Yeah, I mean, it was well over an hour before helicopters showed up.
And that was by design. I mean, that's what's so crazy about the story. And there will be discipline that results from all of this later. But there had been 2, as I understand it, commanding officers back at the base making the decision not to send it. They told the guys on the inside it'd be there in 15 minutes, and then they chose not to send it.
Yeah. So what happened was, and so on that aspect of it, I mean, so part of my problem was they kept saying, well, so the team went in, the overall team went in with this false assumption that it would be there in 15 minutes. So I do remember that in the mission, it was supposed to be on 15-minute strip alert, right? And so let me explain what that means. So all that means is that the helicopter must take off within 15 minutes. And that's from Jalalabad. Jalalabad was probably a 35, 40-minute flight. I don't know exactly, but 35, 40-minute flight on top of that. And then the other aspect of it is there's priorities inside of who gets air and who doesn't, right? And so, like and what happened that day was it's like a perfect storm. One of the SEAL teams got into a gunfight up in the Ganjgal Valley. They were going after an HVT. And so they obviously rated aircraft above us. And so part of that was justified. The other part of it that wasn't justified was there was an aspect of it where air did break loose and was able to come help us. But then, somebody else shut it down.
So at least one of those was a conscious decision not to send the helicopter support.
Yes.
Not to prioritize somebody else, but just not to send it. And what was the stated reason for that? Because you're living this on the outside, like you're watching this happen. What was the stated reason for that?
I mean, we didn't have one. I mean, nobody gave us one. I mean, honestly, it comes down to the egos between the Marines and the Army. And I can give you a statement in a minute that was said over the radio that proves that. But yeah, I mean, it was clear, egotistical, typical non-communication between two units. I mean, this is what happens when, these two don't communicate on the battlefield, and it happens a lot.
You like to think there's no team rivalry when you're out there. You like to think it's all about Team America versus Team Taliban. I guess, that's naive. The request for artillery support was also not met, as you said. They said you're too close to the village. Meanwhile, the village is gone. The village ran, and the Taliban has taken over the homes of the village, right? I mean, it's like, what village?
Yeah, well, so let me tell you where this problem came in, right? So this was a rule of engagement that Stan McChrystal put in place. Stan McChrystal put into place. It was again, I don't know it verbatim, but about 30 to 45 days before this incident, there was a rule of engagement that was in place that stated, I can't remember the exact numbers or perimeter of how far you could not drop artillery within a village. And it stated that you couldn't drop the rounds or munitions within X amount of radius of the village unless you had gone through the village and cleared it to make sure that there were no civilians and only enemy combatants.
Oh, how are you supposed to? It's like, that's not exactly practicable in a situation like this. That's the problem, right? When you have commanding officers or generals writing these rules in a rule book, and then you guys are left to live it and be forced to live it, even when you can look at the situation and say that rule should not apply here. Yeah, that's why, I mean, frankly, Dakota, that's why you have commanding officers, because they're not monkeys. We need thinking men out there to say, I'm not following that rule right now because the village has left. They've left the building.
Well, this is the problem, right? Our leaders are made leaders over competent people, right? Competent people challenge policies and rules written by people who shouldn't be writing rules and policies. But rule followers don't. Rule followers follow the rules, and therefore they, that is what we look for, or that is what leadership is. Because they get rid of people who are competent and people who challenge and make people have to think outside the box of what rules and regulations are.
So incredibly frustrating. So you're watching all of this, the delays, the refusals, the blind adherence to rules that make no sense given the actual combat situation. And then you say, let me go in there. I mean, it's basically a send me in, coach. And the answer is no.
Yeah, so we asked to go in, and we're told no. And so I had a Mark 19, which is a 40 millimeter grenade launcher on my up gun, and then I also had a 240 machine gun. It's just a gun, right? And so finally, I looked at Rodriguez Chavez. I said, "Hey, look, we got to go. We got to do something." He's like, "Yeah, we do." And so I got my Afghan soldiers. They jumped in their trucks, and we just headed in. And like as soon as we started heading in, we started taking rounds. I mean, we started. But
wait, before you're like kind of jumping over the part this is important because you were told no, and then you asked again. I mean, you did try to follow the rule.
I did, yeah. I requested 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, you were told no. You asked a third time. You were told no, and then it was really at that point that you said, "I'm not listening to no anymore. I'm going."
Yeah, I mean, I think the last call that I said over the radio was, "Be advised that." I mean, my call sign was Fox 33, so I said, "Be advised, Fox 33 is." We were on our way in, and that was it. And so we headed on in.
From the guys who were telling you no, were they like, "Get back here, Fox 33"? Like, what happened there?
I didn't listen. I just set my radio down.
That was irrelevant at that point. So in you go.
Matter.
And yeah, the fighting's underway.
Oh, I mean, yeah. I mean, my teammate, I could hear my, I heard as soon as we left, I heard Gunny Kennefick come over the radio, and he stated that they needed a medical evacuation. And so, look, that obviously tells you somebody's been injured. And so I knew. So I always kept a Sharpie in my gear, right? So like I always kept a Sharpie in case I needed to write something or whatever, right? And I pulled that out because I knew that if I could I knew with this medevac that he would have to give a 10-digit grid. And so I knew if I could get that grid, I could put it on a map, and then I could figure out where they were. And, everybody was stepping on them. I mean, there's tons of chaos. You got people trying to call in artillery. You got people needing help, people trying to talk where they're at, and all this chaos. And he's finally, Kennefick said, "Get off the radio. I've got a medevac." And so everybody shut off. and he started to give the location and stopped. So we headed on in, and we took the truck on into this valley. And so as we come around this valley, it was like a wash, right? It was like a riverbed that led up to this village. And as we come around this turn, they had stacked these rocks. They tried to make put these rocks on the road to where a Humvee couldn't fit through it, right? Like they tried to use these as like barriers. And Rodriguez Chavez, I'll never forget, he was hitting these rocks. And I knew that if he ever slowed down or stopped, that we were sitting ducks. Like they would overrun us in no time. So it was a pretty nerve-wracking situation. And so as we came around, went in, and as soon as we turned right up this riverbed, and like I said, on the way in, there were all these people walking out, and they were just wounded. I mean, they were carrying each other. It was during Ramadan as well, so none of them had been eating or drinking water during the day because of Ramadan. And so it's just like, it's a perfect combination. It's crazy hot. And all these people are wounded and just like mangled, and like I didn't know what I was driving into. And so as we turn up this valley, or we turn up this riverbed, it was just like there were bodies everywhere. It was just complete chaos.
So you come into it, and they're shooting at you, and you're manning, as I understand, the turret, and fighting back with the gun, fighting back at the fire as it comes at you. And what's your main focus at that point?
Honestly, all I could think about was finding my teammates. Like literally, as much as I want to say that I cared about saving anybody else, like I didn't. Like I had to find them. Like all I could think about was I needed to find them. I promised them that I would find them, that I would get to them. And I truly thought that, hey, they're going to get to the road. They're waiting on me. I just need to get this truck up the road as far as I can. And I'm going to get them out. Mm-hmm. And that was my thought pattern. And I, on the first trip in, like literally these people are trying to jump on the truck. Like I mean, I would like my gun, like, on top of the truck. I'm sure you can imagine, but like, you can only push it down so far, right? Because it'll hit the side of the truck. Mm-hmm. And these guys were so close that my gun I couldn't even shoot them. And so I would have to pull up out of the turret, and I would shoot them with my M4 out of the top of the turret. And the rounds were literally, it sounded like static over my head. Like rounds were like, they would hit inside the turret, because the turret didn't protect you much, because right. When they had the high ground on you, they can shoot down in it. They have the angle on it. And it was so chaotic. Like I was always the guy who imagined the worst case scenarios. And this was worse than any worst case scenario I could ever imagine. And I remember with the first trip in, we shoved the truck up as far as we could. And I hadn't heard from my team or anything. And I honestly thought they maybe lost their radio or broke it, and they got into a house, and they're defending a house. And I remember we pulled up as far as we could in this village, and I feel on my right hand, it just got I know it sounds stupid, but like extra wet, right? Like it just wasn't sweat. And I look over, just blood's everywhere. And I'm like, gosh, I've been hit. And I fall down in the turret, and I see that I had a piece of shrapnel up in my arm, and I wrapped it up and just got back on the gun. When I knew I was all right, I got back on the gun, and we turned the truck around. We couldn't find anybody, and at this point, there were bodies everywhere, and like a lot of them were Afghan National Army or soldiers. And so what I found my interpreter got in the truck. He got in the machine gun. He got on the gun up top. And then I would get out, and I would run and try to provide aid to these Afghan National Army soldiers. And, I would get to them, and I'd put tourniquets on them if I could. I would try to get an airway on them. Sometimes I'd have to like lay next to them for a little bit, because like I would get there, and then I would start getting shot at, and I'd have to fight. And what I would do is I'd bring them back and I put them in the trunk of the Humvee. And so we filled up the first Humvee and we left. Like we went back out. They dropped me off at like kind of the mouth, like where I told you the first part was when we turned back into the riverbed. So I staged there and we started building what we call a casualty collection point, right? So it was kind of like the first safe zone, not safe, but not really combatant, but like that would be our first area we dropped these bodies off at. So we did, and Rodriguez Chavez had to go get another truck because the gun was down and there was like the truck was tore up. We were almost out of ammo. And so I went and got another truck, came back in. I jumped in that truck. We went in again. And so at this time, we got the Afghan soldiers to bring they had these like Ford Rangers. And so they would bring them in. And what I would do is I would jump out. Rodriguez Chavez stayed in the driver's seat because like you didn't want to give the driver's seat up. I mean, imagine if the enemy got the Humvee, right? Okay. And so he stayed in the driver's seat. Fazel, the interpreter, stayed on the up gun, and then I was going out and I was just grabbing the bodies and bringing them back. And what I would do is I would fill the bed of these trucks up with the bodies, right? And I would put the dead ones on the bottom, and then the ones that had a chance to live, I put them on top. And we just kept doing this. We did it like 3 or 4 trips.
Are the high fuel costs putting a damper on your summer vacay plans? From higher prices at the pump to a jump in airfare, it is getting more expensive to get away for a week. But what if you could soak up those vacation vibes year-round? Get yourself a Michael Phelps swim spa by Master Spas, and you can. Whether you want to stay close to home this summer or you just want to extend your break, right? Make it go on a little longer when you get home, a Michael Phelps swim spa by Master Spas can transform your backyard into an oasis. It combines the benefits of a pool with the therapy of a hot tub. This is going to reinvent family time. You'll love it, and your family and friends will too. Michael Phelps Swim Spas by Master Spas come in a variety of sizes to complement almost any yard, even if it's a small one. And since it's heated, you can use it year-round in any climate. Michael Phelps Swim Spas are 100% made in the USA by Master Spas, the world's largest swim spa manufacturer. Go to masterspas.com, put in the promo code MK, and save $1,000 on a Michael Phelps swim spa or $500 on a Master Spas hot tub. That's masterspas.com, promo code MK. Dakota, did you ever think, with all due respect to the Afghan National Army, I'm here to find 4 Marines and I can't risk my life spending time getting this guy and getting this guy and I'm on, was there ever a thought, I don't have time for this and I'm not going to risk my life for these guys?
No, because, there is no prioritization when it comes, it's just good and evil. And, these guys were on my team. Think about what you want about them, but I don't feel like I just lost 4 guys that day. I mean, I lost six Afghans, right? And I knew those guys as good as I knew my Marines, and I cared about them too, right? I mean, just they were good guys. They had families. We were just born in 2 different places, and so no, obviously, initially I went in there, thinking about my Marines, but, at the end of the day, I did what they would have done for me. And, I love those guys, we'd gone through some hard times together. And I'll be honest with you, look, people, the Afghan National Army gets a bad rap, I don't know everybody else's experience, but what I'll say is my experience with the Afghan National Army, the core guys that I had, obviously there's good and bad. There's good and bad in the Marine Corps. There's good and bad what I served with. There's good and bad in the Army. There's good and bad in everything. But what I'll say is that the group of Afghans that I served with, I don't know that I would pick Americans over them, as far as what I thought about their character.
Wow. And a lot of the guys who you saved were wounded and would have died if you hadn't gotten them out of there, not to mention the respect you showed for the Afghan dead in taking their bodies back to a place of safety or where they could be delivered to loved ones. So you go back in. So that was time 2. You still hadn't found the Americans, and so you went back in a third time. And at that point, had things died down at all in terms of the shooting? You know, like was the static, as you described it, of the gunfire quieting at all?
Yeah, so what would happen is so we got a bunch of aircraft on station, right? And so I think it was on my first or second, one of the times when I figured out where everybody else was. I got accountability for everybody else. I came over the radio and finally said, be advised, we have 4 U.S. missing, right? I knew that as soon as I said those words, that resources for days are allocated to us, right? Like now you don't want to you only use those words when you need to, when it's very critical, because you can't just use it just to get resources because you'll get in trouble. But they were missing. I didn't know where they were at. Nobody knew where they were at, and we needed the resources. And so when I said that, like, it goes up to a level that it goes to the top, right? And so the prioritization of resources allocation comes to us, and it did. Like, we had fast movers on stations, which are airplanes. We ended up getting 2 Apaches. We got 4 Kiowas. So you start getting these allocations of resources that are needed, and to be able to recover these bodies, or to be able to hopefully recover the team alive. And so and then obviously they're going to launch PJs, which is pararescue, and their whole entire mission is to get it's to get down pilots, but to recover teams. And so we got a team of PJs as well. And so we what would happen is while the aircraft were on station, the fighting would die down. But then when they'd leave, to go refuel or resupply or whatever, I remember the first time that the helicopter, they were there for less than 5 minutes because they were completely out of ammunition. That's where the situation was. So when they would go back to resupply, obviously you'd have, they would take advantage of that for sure.
You went back in again after being told again not to, which was a useless order at that point and prior. And as I understand it, this was the third time in that you found the Marines, your fellow Marines.
Well, I went in, and so I think on my third time I went in and I had jumped in a truck with. So basically at this point, air was overhead, and what they would do is they would fly and they would say spot, right? And so like wherever the helicopter was at that point, I knew that below them was a body. And so it was kind of like our communication to show, like, for them to be able to show where, because the terrain was just, the terraces were, the terrain was hard to see. And so they would say spot. And then what I would do is I would run over to wherever that was, and I'd grab a body and I'd bring them back, right? And, because at this point, what had happened was a lot of these Afghan soldiers, they were just pretending to be dead. And the only way they would show you they're alive is they'd like move their foot because they couldn't move fast enough. They were getting shot at. And so like the best bet for them was to pretend like they were dead until somebody could help them. Right. Mm-hmm. And, so I went in and so they called spot over on the northern side of the valley, and it was pretty far off and you couldn't get a Humvee over there. So we jumped into a Ford Ranger. We went over, and I got out, and the driver stayed in. And as I ran around the side of this terrace, and the terrace was kind of curved. You know what I mean? Like, it's easy to see all the way to the end of a straight wall, right? It's always easy to find the end of a straight wall. But, a curved one, you can only see so far. And so as I come around, I run up on one of my best friends, Dot Ali. And Dot Ali was so close to me, just such an incredible Afghan, taught me a lot. And as I bend over to pick him up, he'd been shot. As I bend over to pick him up, rigor mortis had already set in, so he got killed early on. Mm-hmm. And as I bend over to pick him up, I'm kind of like on my knee, right? I'm up against the terrace, and like I'm on my right knee, and my left knee's up. My weapon, like, you know, when you sit down like that, you don't want to put the barrel in the ground, so you got to protect the barrel. Excuse me. And so it was sitting facing up. And so as I'm reaching down, trying to get him arranged, I'm getting shot at, so I'm trying to stay low. And I just feel this, like, I don't know if you've ever been hit so hard in the head to where you see these like stars, like white stars, but I got hit in the back of the head. And I didn't know what had happened. And as I turn around, there's this guy standing over me with an AK-47, and he's like pointing at me to go with him. And I just remember thinking to myself, well, first off, I was mad that I'd messed up. And then second off, all I could think about was I didn't want my family to see this on TV. Like, this never goes anywhere good. You know what I mean? Like, and I just like, you're going to kill me. Like, that's all I could think about was like, just kill me. Just kill me. And when I turned, my finger was sitting right on the trigger. And so I had what's called a 203 grenade launcher on the bottom of my M4. And it's a 40 millimeter grenade. When it goes off, it takes 28 meters, I think, or 32 meters, whatever, but a certain amount of turns, and then it explodes. It's literally like a grenade. It kills everything within a 5 meter radius. So when I turned, I felt my finger on the trigger, and I couldn't remember if it was even loaded. Like, honestly, I didn't know if it was loaded. I didn't know if it was. I didn't know. I didn't know if it was going to go click and then he's going to shoot me or what. And so I squeezed the trigger on it, and it hits him in the chest, and he falls over. And I don't remember like why I didn't, or if I did, or I don't remember anything about like how I got from there to. I go back to Dad Ali, and I'm grabbing him, and I'm trying to pick him up, and it's like this fight. And he's like, we're rolling on the ground. He's like, he's trying to grab my eyes, and I can't get my gun. And it's like, he's literally got his arm around me in a chokehold, and I'm trying to get out of it. And I'm just so exhausted. And I remember like my vision just starting to like that, just like, I'm going to pass out. Like, I'm going to pass out. I don't know if it was because of obviously him choking me. I don't know if it was obviously, my muscles just fatigued or me freaking out. And I remember getting to this point to where like I'm holding on obviously around my neck. And I just remember him like loosening up, and who knows why he loosened up his grip. Like, maybe he lost enough blood. I don't know. I don't know. And so like I remember getting over on top of him, and I just start fighting it, right? Like I'm fighting him, and like I'm hitting him, and I'm trying to grab whatever I can. And I get on top of him, and he's on his back. And I remember getting on top of him and finally like holding his like face down with my forearm. And I reach up, and I grab a rock, and all I do is I just start bashing this guy in the face. And I don't know, it was like 3 or 4 hits, and I just remember this look in his face, and he just like had this look that he knew he was going to die. And I truly believe that when people die, like they know they're going to die. I truly believe that there's this look at the point that they know they're gone, they're going to have it. I see it when I'm, as a firefighter, I seen it in war, I seen it with enemy, and I seen it with friendlies. And he had that look, and obviously I don't think I thought about it at that moment, but I think about it all the time because he's literally the only face that I still see. And I just realized I didn't hate that guy. Like, I don't even know him. He had a family that would miss him. I had a family that would miss me. There was only one way out of it. Like, either he was going to die or I was going to die. He didn't believe he was wrong. He believed in his cause as much as I did. And it was just kind of crazy, like this point that how we got there was just because we were born in 2 different places. And it's at that moment that I realized that I wasn't fighting off of hate. I was fighting off of because I loved my country. I loved my people. It was this wasn't being done out of hate. It was being done out of because I loved and believed in my life and our country and obviously my teammates. And so I killed this guy, and it was like at that point my life changed forever. I took Dottie and put him back in the truck, and we left, and then we got in the other Humvee, and then we located the bodies just a little bit after this and went and grabbed them.
It sounds absolutely primal. It sounds like, I mean, talk about fight or flight, like you were on instinct at that point to save your life. I mean, when I hear you talk about it, maybe I'm wrong. I feel like there's a tinge of regret.
I don't know. I don't regret. No, I don't regret killing him. I just regret that it had to come to that. I did. I mean, I don't regret killing anybody. There was no other option.
You did what was asked of you. You did your duty.
Yeah, I think it just sucks that that it had to come to that. Did it? I mean, that's the question. Did it have to come to that? You know what I mean? That's the part that sucks, right? Nobody wins, right? Nobody wins. What was accomplished, right? Like I understand that we get someone evil off the planet. Yeah, we did. Did we change anything though? And that's the hard part of it is did it have to come to that?
I mean, for you, you're the man in the position to ask that question. You're allowed to ask that question. We're all allowed, but it's more meaningful coming from you. And I would just say, though, to the extent I'm allowed to opine on it from my anchor chair, the answer is 100% yes, it did matter. I don't know that it was worth the blood and treasure, but it definitely did matter. Just because we left with our tail between our legs, thanks to the decision of our current commander-in-chief, didn't erase what you guys did for us over there. I mean, you kept the homeland safe for 20 years. That happened. We did not face another massive terrorist attack here because you guys were doing things like that over there, and that can't be taken away.
No, I guess like my factor to it is it's not. You could argue all day whether we should have been there or whether we shouldn't, right? Like that's a look, I think that if the Taliban thought that we were going to occupy them for 20 years, they would have handed us Osama bin Laden on September 12th, right? Mm-hmm. But the fact is that we could have done and left that country better. Like the people that we had there, the troops that we had there, the capabilities that the United States of America has, there's no doubt in my mind that we could have truly made a difference and we could have truly left an everlasting mark and gave them some type of hope of democracy, not necessarily what we have, but something that's more fitting to what the majority of them want. Not what America wants for them, but what they want for themselves. And the mass people that live there, they want good. They want good. They don't want this killing and this evilness. Like they don't. Like I don't care what anybody says. And I just think that we could have done a better job, and we could have done a more of a better job and left them in a better position of hope. If we had kept the politics out of it, we'd have let these men and women who are just incredible people who were willing to go do the nation's bidding, if we'd have let them do their job and let them have, instead of this being all about politics, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. And there's zero question we did not leave well, and we did not leave those who we were partnering with well at all. And the news reflects that daily. I mean, for what it's worth, on the politics front, Joe Biden's approval numbers have never recovered. They fell thanks to that debacle, and they've never recovered. And so I do think, Democrat or Republican here in this country, it was held against him. The country knew it was wrong. And it wasn't all on him. I mean, I know you're talking not just about the withdrawal, but years beforehand and how Afghanistan was handled. Let me pause that and we'll come back to it because I want to get to the last phase of this battle. You go back in again. So I guess now we're on time number 4. What happened that time?
And so that was the time. So time number 4 is the time that we went in and they located the bodies. And I'll never forget. They said, well, and they just said they found they see 4 bodies. Like, that was how they were saying, like 2 bodies, whatever. And so they said 5 bodies in this trench. And I asked them to drop a smoke grenade, and I took off sprinting. And I ran and jumped off this terrace and landed in the ditch, and I landed on top of Gunny Johnson. And then I went a little bit to the left, and there was Doc Layton with all of his med gear out on top of Lieutenant Johnson. And then a little bit further was Gunny Kennefick, and they'd all been killed. And so it was just like everything in me was gone at that moment. I remember reaching down and picking. I think I picked up Gunny Johnson first, and Gunny was the biggest one. And I picked him up, threw him over my shoulders, and I started to carry him out, and I just slipped and I fell. Like, it was like every bit of energy I had left, I fell flat on my face. And I got back up, and the Afghan soldiers, I see them, they're right there, and they're going to grab the guys, and I was kind of upset. I kind of got mad at them, and I said, "Hey, don't touch my guys." I said, I'll take them home. And Fazel came up to me and he said, no. He said, and I did. I started crying. Like, I literally, like, when I fell with Gunny Johnson, like, I literally started crying. And I'll never forget, Fazel came up to me and said, don't cry. You can't show this weakness. And I was like, you're right. And he said, the Afghans want to help you get your guys out because they just watched you help get their guys out. And it was such a kind of, for me, it was like a monumental moment in my life of, it's not us against them. It's just, it's good against bad. And, they helped me carry them out. We put them in the backs of these trucks. And I'll never forget, I jumped in the back of this Afghan Humvee. It was like a high back, which is like the ones that are troop carriers. And so I was teammates. I had Gunny Kennefick and Lieutenant Johnson in my truck, and we left the team and we were just heading back to base. And it was on the way out, all these Afghans, the villagers, were standing at the mouth of the valley just laughing at me, like just pointing and laughing. And we went on back and got on base, and yeah, that was kind of the end of the day.
I know in the book you mentioned at that moment you're thinking, what am I going to do to them? Maybe I'll do something to them. And was it Faisal or somebody in the truck said, no.
It's not worth it. Said it's not worth it. I did. But it just.
Who could blame you? No one would blame you for feeling that.
But that's what separates us from them.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But the feeling is completely human. And I mean, it's Dakota, when I hear the story, I feel like you kept your promise. You were on the road. You did meet them, not in the way any of you intended, but you lived up to your word.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's still the biggest failure of my life.
The biggest failure.
Yeah, I mean, 100. You don't get to change. You don't get to change. Just because it doesn't feel good doesn't mean you don't get to change it. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the facts of it. Like my teammates are dead, and I'm not. It's like I told them when they called me to give me the award. When they said you're a hero, and I said, well, why don't you call my teammates and let them know how much of a hero I am? This is the reality of it. And like, I don't say it to feel sorry for myself, because I don't feel sorry for myself. Look, this is, I failed. It's the biggest failure of my life, but it's also what has driven me to push myself to different limits and to still continue.
But I don't understand that. I don't understand this. How is it your failure? How is it yours?
Well, I left that morning to go in there and get them out alive. And life's pretty simple. You either get them out alive or you die trying. And if you didn't die trying, well, you didn't try hard enough. And
no, that doesn't make sense. That's not true.
Well, I mean,
it's not true. Your promise would be no more kept if you had died in the effort, right? I mean, there just would have been more bloodshed, more lives lost.
Yeah, but I mean, I hear you. Like, I'm not sitting here saying that it's supposed to make sense. But
I know, and I know I'm not going to convince you.
But at the end of the day,
I know my audience doesn't want that remark to go unchallenged because we're all on your side, and not a single person listening to this thinks that you failed in any way.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, though, I went in there to get him out alive. And I truly believe in my heart that on that first trip that I went in, that I might have been 50 yards from them. I truly believe that they were alive. And after I was hit, and the gun went down, I turned around, right? And I think that I took that into my, I don't know. I just don't think that I had the right to do that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I mean,
extraordinary.
we all have to live with their decisions, and that's just part of it. And again, I don't want people to, I hate when I see people comment on this and they're like, oh, well, he's just struggling. No, I'm not. I'm not struggling, but I'm also not going to change the narrative to feel good, right? Like so many people try to do through life. I use this as an example to go around and teach people, right? Like, me serving or this is why you train, or this is why, this is why you don't go into things casually, or, what I mean? Like I use this as good, and it is my fuel. It's my fuel to go around and tell the stories. It's my fuel to remind people that, hey, look, like, that life's hard.
This episode of The Megyn Kelly Show is sponsored by the Claremont Review of Books, a quarterly journal of original essays and book reviews illuminating the core issues of our time. The new spring issue just published, and it is well worth the read, which you can do at ClaremontReviewOfBooks.com/MK. The cover essay is a fascinating survey of Russia's advance into Ukraine, how it came to pass, and what it may soon lead to. It's called A Tragedy of Errors by military expert and celebrated novelist Mark Halperin. He's brilliant, and you can access the essay for free at ClaremontReviewOfBooks.com/MK, along with a sampling of other articles from the new issue, including a fantastic review about the 1619 Project and the pervasive threat of critical race theory in schools, a favorite topic of ours here on this show. A terrific essay on what Trump revealed about the American right. And you can access a sampling of unlocked essays from the just released spring 2022 issue of the Claremont Review of Books today. New subscribers will receive a bonus issue with a 1-year subscription. 5 issues for the price of 4 at just $19.95. Go to ClaremontReviewOfBooks.com/MK. I wonder if you can see that, that the same thing that makes you blame yourself for this is the thing that saved the lives of 13 Americans and 23 Afghans that day. Like the thing that makes you see everything as a matter of your personal responsibility is the thing that won you the Medal of Honor. And it's your burden and your blessing to bear.
Yeah, it was always the hardest part of getting the medal, right? Like, it was just such an oxymoron of I went against orders. I lost my entire teammates. Like I lost the guys I cared about. And now I'm awarded for it. And, I always, and for a long time, I don't necessarily look at it like this anymore, but, first off, I don't wear the medal. I don't, if it's not in my daughter's backpack or her, I gave it to my daughter, she enjoys it way more than I ever have. And, I just, I always felt like it was like a punishment to me. This was part of the punishment for the failure.
Wow. I mean, even under your totally ungenerous interpretation of what happened that day, ungenerous to yourself, there would be failures and there would be enormous successes. I mean, do you allow yourself the feeling of, I don't know if it's triumph or gratitude that you helped save the lives of so many others, dozens of others?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know. I honestly, until you just said, I mean, I don't really know that I ever thought about it. You know, I don't know that I think about it, right? Like I just think about, you know, the moments that changed my life. And you know, I'll say this, you know, the man that I am today, like you know, that guy, you know, that I came into contact with in there, you know, I feel like he gave me the heart that I have, right? He gave me the empathy that I have. He gave me the understanding. Like, if I can find a way to connect with that man, there's no reason we can't find a way to connect here. You know, there's no, you know, choosing to hate people and choosing hate over love is something that I know it sounds so weird, but like choosing hate over love is truly a harder choice. It's like trying to frown over smile, right? There's more reasons to care about people and to have empathy towards people. And we are all more alike than we are different.
What a perspective. And from such a moment, as you described it with that Afghan man, you mentioned this led to the end of your career as a Marine, though one is never a former Marine, right? You're never a former Marine. But can you explain why? Because the stress and the trauma of what happened that day stayed with you.
Yeah, I mean, I was in a bad spot. I mean, look, I'll say this: I was struggling for a long time. You know, just a lot of factors, right? Obviously, like, war's war, right? Like, I signed up to do that. I mean, listen, this is what I get. I signed up for it. I knew what I was getting into. It's like it's like a football player getting mad at getting hit, right? But what I didn't sign up for is the incompetency in leadership, the lack of accountability. Yeah. I didn't sign up for, I didn't sign up for that. And that was the part where I was so mad that I probably struggled with more than anything.
I don't blame you. I want to talk about that, but as I understand it, you were sent back home because you were starting to behave in reckless ways. You were carrying you're carrying this with you, and acting in ways that made clear you were, I don't know if I want to say you had a death wish, but you were taking unnecessary risks to yourself. Yeah. So you got sent back home, and you went into a treatment program, right, for PTSD. And you're very open in your book about the fact that, I mean, this is amazing, 2 weeks before the President of the United States called you and told you that you were being awarded the Medal of Honor, you attempted to take your own life.
Yeah, it was a little bit before that, but I did. I mean, it was I just looked around at what I was doing to people, you know, and like I just looked around at like the worry I put on my dad. I just felt like a burden, and you know, like I never wanted to be a burden on anybody. Like I still don't. I mean, I never, if I'm not an asset or I'm not a value or I'm not contributing in some way, like I don't want to be part of it. And I felt like where I was at in life at that point that you know, that I just couldn't get my stuff together and I should fix it, right? And
can you describe it, Dakota? Like what was it? What was going through your head? What was the pain? What was it that made you feel like a burden?
Just like, you know, I just like I was evil, you know, like I just like the fear I could see in people's eyes, you know, with me, like I was a monster. It's just like drinking and just, you know, the thing is, and people don't talk about this much, you know, you don't fight evil with nice people. You know what I mean? Like, you don't fight rough and rugged people with nice people. Like, you either got to get on their level, or you're going to get killed. It's like, it's kind of like animals. And I came back and just, I don't know, I couldn't turn it off. And I was hurting and I didn't know what to do with it. I mean, I was 21 years old and I just didn't know what to do with it. And so just turned to alcohol, alcohol has never been known for helping anything.
Right.
And because that was part of the culture. That's how we dealt with everything in the Marine Corps before, right? So it's continued on the behaviors that I knew, and I got out, and I don't know, like I just seen, there was a couple friends that I had, and I think it was that night that I just seen like the fear in their eyes, and I remember driving home, and I pulled off this highway at my buddy's shop because I knew, I didn't want anybody worried about me, right? So I pulled in, and I knew that he would be in because he comes into work every morning. And I was going to do it right there. So that way that when he came in, he would, he'd find me, and then nobody had to worry about me,
In a small miracle, you tried to use a firearm and learned after pulling the trigger, it was unloaded.
Yeah. And I had shot that gun that day. Like, I had shot it that day. And, I don't know that I don't have too many guns that are unloaded. And so that gun was, I stuck it to my head and I squeezed the trigger, and it just it went click, and there was no round in it. And I don't know if, I feel like I know who did it. I don't truly know though. Like, obviously in my heart, I feel like I know, but again.
You think someone took the bullets out, someone who cared about you?
Yeah, I think somebody probably seen how I was that night, and they took the bullets out. And so I remember thinking to myself after it went click, I made a deal with myself that day. And I said, if you're going to keep living life this way, then put bullets in it and get it over with. Like, just do it, don't ruin everybody else's life over yourself. But if you don't do it and you put the vehicle in drive, you're not going to look back. And that's, that here I am. That
was the before and after moment. And you never found out, no one ever said to you, I took the bullets out? Like, you don't know?
Mm-mm. Wow. I didn't tell, I literally did not mention that to anyone. The first person I ever told that to was Bing West when he wrote my book. And because I felt so obligated to tell that piece, because in these books that we came back and wrote, it looks like people are larger than life. And, what wasn't talked about early on was that we all struggled, wasn't the demons. And I felt like I couldn't talk about, the battle and tell the war story without telling the cost.
Right. Well, too often we skip right past that in an attempt to honor our soldiers, our Marines. It feels like, well, why would we want to go to that place? That's the dark place of the story. But I think all of it is to your credit. I mean, all of it's to your credit to reach out to your, fellow service members and say, I went through this. It's real. There's no shame in it. There's no shame. It's actually, I don't know, for lack of a better word, normal to have immense trauma and stress after something like that. And it makes me, not to therapize you, Dakota, but it makes me want to stop on, they don't send nice men to war. I was evil. Like, you have to make room for the very real alternative, right? This is cognitive behavioral therapy. Like the elephant body is saying, you're evil. But the man riding on top of the elephant and can manage those emotions and say to himself, no, okay, the alternate narrative is I can behave in ways that might resemble evil if they weren't done for good reasons. if I weren't sent here on a contract basis by my government to defend my country. I can behave in ways that might look awful to somebody who didn't understand the context of it, but it doesn't make me an evil man. Like Osama bin Laden, evil, right? But Dakota Meyer, no.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, right? Like I have the capability of being evil, right? I have the capability of being a monster. And I've experienced that and had to do that at levels that a lot of people won't have to, right? And I pray that they don't ever have to. But I know I've seen it. It's almost like I don't know. It's almost like like in an argument, like the first time you get in an argument with somebody and you're like, oh, shut up. And they're like, whoa, somebody told me to shut up, right? And then it just escalates. And right, the further you get in that, like whether it goes to throwing punches or whatever, that's the new bar standard, right? I got to experience that, for better or worse, right? But yeah, I'm not evil. Like I'm a good person. I am on the side of good. But I think that like the hard part is going over there and having to live with these evil creatures. And right, like I'm saying there is a lot of difference for us, right? Like when people talk about, well, how's America any different than Russia, than what Russia's doing? Well, like first off, let's sit down and we can have a conversation about this. Let's talk about our troops. Let's talk about how we handle ourselves over there, right? I understand that there's a fine line in any situation between murder and self-defense, right? Or whatever it is. And literally it's intent. It's what your intentions were. Mm-hmm. And so, this is an aspect that yeah, I agree with you. I'm not evil. Like I'm a good person. But like at that point in time, at 21 years old, after being consumed in this and doing this over and over and over and over again, and literally like, it's you start to question. You start like you have to figure out a way to control that. And I don't think that any 21-year-old, most 21-year-olds can't even control, their lunch account in college, much less the emotional levels of this aspect, right?
Oh my God. I mean, we have people right now complaining that they're deeply depressed and having suicidal ideations allegedly over mean tweets. I mean, it's like what you went through is the ultimate in trauma. I mean, it really is. And it doesn't make it different just because you're a Marine. And honestly, one of the reasons why it's important for you to tell your story, warts and all, is because we are, for lack of a better term, a little trigger happy in the United States, or at least we have been for the past 20 years. And as we debate, just how provocative should we be toward Russia in this conflict with Ukraine, and how, we had Joe Biden basically saying we will go in against China if they try to take Taiwan. Is that like maybe we could dial back the rhetoric and be a little bit more thoughtful and cautious before we just threaten American troops are coming or just send our American troops in, because you are the perfect example of how special these guys are and how we need to be really, really careful and thoughtful before we risk the lives of men and women like you.
Yeah, we do. And not just because like risking, our lives, but the spill factor on this is astronomical. Yeah. The spill factor of, guess what? Like there's going to be people who have people from other countries that they didn't do the politics. They didn't, they're not the ones making these decisions to go to war either, right? And so, it's a factor, the humanization, we've got to stop taking the humanization factor out of all this, right? And yeah, look, I'm telling you, there's nobody who'd be more willing to go do the nation's bidding on behalf of democracy more than me. And guess what? Like, look, we, as much as we want to talk about the generation, the country's weak or whatever, I'll tell you this, we still have an all-volunteer military. You know what I mean? We still have men and women who believe in this country and these ideas in a time right now where it's not necessarily a cool thing, but who are still signing up and willing to raise their right hand to go fight on behalf of this country, no matter what the politics are, no matter what the news wave is. There's still men and women who are doing it, right? And we have to hold those with value. We have to really put some time and effort in to thinking about where are we sending them, and what are the repercussions of this, and is it worth it? At what cost? At what cost are we going to do this? I think that's what somebody should have to show before we start sending this in. At what cost? At what cost are we going to defend? Are we going to defend Taiwan? At what cost are we going to help out Ukraine? Right? At what cost? Right? And as long as they'll put out at what cost and what our objective is, I think that's got to be identified. But there's been no accountability. Like, what was our objective in Iraq? What was our objective in Afghanistan, right? It just kept getting changed. The ball kept getting moved, and then we're there forever. And then troops guys just keep getting killed. And it's like, tell us what we're doing. Tell us what we're going after, right? Like, what is it? Like identify the objectives. Okay, once we do this, we're leaving, and that's it, right? And that's what it's got to come down to. And we've got to be able to lay out and say the cost and let people know that.
Flash forward a bit, and we'll conclude with sort of the most recent chapter, because you get the call from President Obama. You're not in a great place emotionally. Love the story. We talked about this last time you were on with Rob O'Neill about how you told him you were too busy, you couldn't chat. The President of the United States is calling you're like, it's not a good time, sir. I actually work for a living. So can you just explain that? What happened there?
Yeah, I was busy. I was pouring concrete. I was tying steel and pouring concrete. I was actually working for my cousin, and they called the headquarters Marine Corps called me and said they're going to do. They need to. Well, first off, they called me. I don't know why, and they just tell me they need to send somebody out to talk to me. And I was nervous, right? Like, why would headquarters Marine Corps be contacting me after I'm out?
Yeah, sounds ominous.
It was. I thought I was in trouble, right? I thought I was in trouble.
Yeah, you disobeyed a bunch of orders. It's like, who knows what this is going to be about?
Yeah, I thought I was in trouble. And they fly a guy out, and I meet him, and he tells me, he goes, "Hey, look, you're going to be receiving the Medal of Honor." And I go, "Man, you got the wrong guy." And he said, No, you're going to be receiving it. It's actually, I guess it was the day that it was going from the Secretary of Defense over to the White House. And his last signature was President Obama, and President Obama is obviously going to do the recommendation of whoever it was at the time. And so I just told him I'm not going to accept it. I said, why don't you all just mail it to me? And he said no. And we kind of went back and forth. The guy's name was Colonel Otto Rutt, just a really, really, really incredible human being. But it turned out to be a close friend. And I said, I don't want it. Just tell them I'm not coming. And so long story short, we go back and forth. And I agree that I'll accept it as long as they have a ceremony at each one of my teammates' grave sites at the same time. And the Patriot Guard riders did that for me. And so long story. So then they tell you, they're like, hey, the president's going to call you. They called me on a Friday. Said, hey, the president's going to call you on Monday at 11:40. We need you to be on a landline an hour prior. And I was like, I can't do that. I've got to work. I'm like, what do you mean? I said, look, I got a cell phone. I'm like, he can call me before work. And they're like, no, it's too early. And I said, well, he can call me after work. I get home about 7. And they're like, no, it's too late. I said, well, then he can just call me on my cell phone. I'll take my lunch break, at 11:40. And that way I can talk to him on lunch. I get 30 minutes. And so they finally arranged it to where he could call it. And so I'm sitting at this gas station in Indiana. We were pouring this slab for this school, and we're sitting up there, and I'm just eating these gas station food, and we're sitting at the table, and 11:50 rolls around, nothing. 12 o'clock, nothing. And I'm like, well, I'm going back to work. So I start to go back to work, and my phone rings, and it's one of his aides or something, and she goes, I'm just so sorry that he's late. And I go, well, I got to go back to work. I'll try to answer the phone if I can, but I've got to work for a living. You all don't pay my bills. And she's like, okay. And so, a long story short, I'm getting ready to get on a machine, and my phone rings, and it's unknown. And I usually don't answer those calls, but I figured that today would be the day if I should. And it comes up, and he goes, Dakota? And I go, yes. He goes, this is Barack Obama. And I go, hey, what's going on, sir? And then he told me I'd be getting the Medal of Honor.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't play some of that moment because I know you were going through a lot, but for the rest of us, it was quite something to watch that happen. I remember being on the air watching it, just stunned and so moved by your story. Here is a bit of the President of the United States, Barack Obama, presenting Dakota Meyer with the Medal of Honor. Watch.
It's been said that where there is a brave man in the thickest of the fight, there is the post of honor. Today we pay tribute to an American who placed himself in the thick of the fight, again and again and again. I would point out something else. Of all the Medal of Honor recipients in recent decades, Dakota is also one of the youngest. He's 23 years old, and he performed the extraordinary actions for which he is being recognized today when he was just 21 years old. Despite all this, I have to say Dakota is one of the most down-to-earth guys that you will ever meet. And because of your humble example, our kids, especially back in Columbia, Kentucky, and in small towns all across America, they'll know that no matter who you are or where you come from, you can do great things as a citizen and as a member of the American family.
You certainly can. Second youngest recipient ever, third living recipient of the Afghanistan-Iraq wars, first living U.S. Marine to be given the honor in 38 years, and at just 22 years old for actions taken at age 21. Again, 13 American lives saved, 23 Afghan lives saved before he's barely able to even have a drink. I mean, it's really extraordinary. You went on to marry Bristol Palin, Sarah Palin's daughter, and who you met, I understand, giving a speech with Sarah Palin. And there was Bristol, and the two of you had two daughters. It ended in divorce. And I understand you and she are in a decent place right now, according to what I read.
Yeah.
Okay. Because that was another thing for which you entirely blamed yourself.
What's up?
That was another thing for which you entirely blamed yourself, according to what I read. But you're in a good place now.
Yeah, it's all good. You know, I got two beautiful daughters, and you know that's what matters. Like my girls are my world.
And which daughter gets to carry the Medal of Honor in her backpack?
So Sailor, she's my oldest. You know, I gave it to her, and you know, she honestly, the funny part is that she lost. So like we went like a month and a half without it. We couldn't find it, and it showed back up in her backpack on the way home one day. I guess she left it at school or something.
Oh my God. I mean, on the bright side, if the teacher finds this, it's very clear who it belongs to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that people, I don't know if she let somebody borrow it or what, but yeah.
That's quite the show and tell. It's like the other kids are like, look at this cool car I won at the arcade.
She wears it all the time. Like she wears it to, like when we go eat at Chili's, she wears it every time. Walks in, like tells people she won it.
That must be kind of awkward for you. Then they want you to tell the story. What do you do then?
And most people don't know what it is. You know what I mean? Like most people, 99.9% of Americans wouldn't know what the Medal of Honor looked like.
So this reminds me of a little bit of Richard Dreyfuss, who won the Academy Award in the 1970s for Best Actor, and he keeps it in his refrigerator. But he has a different MO because he figures at some point somebody's going to ask for a drink, so he can send him over there. It's just like a conversation starter.
That's a good idea.
So you can do some fun things with it if you want to, keep it rolling when your daughter gets older. And how has fatherhood changed you and your world perspective? Because I'm sure it has.
Yeah, so the person, so her name's Katie Kopp, and she was a psychologist. They embedded them at that time with us, or when there was like an event like this, and so she ultimately made the decision for me to come home, and for a long time I was mad at her. I was really mad at her. And after having Atlee and things fatherhood kind of catching up to me, and I really appreciated her, and I called her probably 8 years later, and I just told her like, thank you. I still don't agree with your decision, But I really do appreciate you sending me home. And you know, fatherhood has, I mean, you know, you think you know a lot about life, then you become a parent, and then you realize that, you know, you might be a black belt in life, but you're just, you know, when you have kids, you go back to being a white belt and you know nothing. And, you know, it's changed my whole perspective, you know, like having two daughters and you know, I need them more than they'll ever need me. And just being able to do this, you know, I think the cool part about life is, you know, used to, I lived life because I had nothing to lose. You know, like I lived life, I'd go over and fight like that. I do the things that I did because I had nothing to lose. And now I watch what I do because I got a lot to lose. I've got a lot to lose, and my life is good. And I wake up every day, and I'm just so fortunate that I get to do this again.
Mm-hmm. And are you feeling better, you know, mentally, emotionally? Have you continued with therapy? You seem like you're in a much better place. And obviously from our interview with Rob and your book, and I know you're doing public speaking and leadership seminars and so on, in addition to working as a firefighter. You seem to me to be doing well and to feel well, but you tell me.
Yeah, no, life's good. Like, life is good. Like, I'm surrounded by great people. I get to wake up every day, and I get to be part of this. You know, I get to do this. It's such an awesome life that we get to do. How'd you get there? How did you get from A to B on that score? You know, because when last we left the story of your mental well-being, you were not in a good place. So how did you get that guy who drove forward in the truck and said no looking back to this guy? Well, you know, I had to stop blaming the world for my problems. You know, that was the first step of fixing. Is I had to stop walking around feeling sorry for myself and expecting the world to feel sorry for me. You know, everybody's gone through something. Look, the worst day of my life is no more significant than the worst day of your life to you. The fact is that, you know, we all have a choice with these things, and there's plenty of things out there to help us. But it's still, at the end of the day, it comes down to your own choice. It comes down to you making the decision to find good. And there's plenty there's for every bad thing you can say about this world or about your life or about anything else, there's 10 good things that you can choose to see too. And that's what it comes down to is that aspect of it of finding. You look at whether you want to find bad or you want to find good, you'll find it. And you know, for me, it took a lot of hard times. It took it took a lot of hard times, and it took a lot of moments of just self-reflecting and having to face failure, and then finally saying, hey, look, I'm going to change this, right? You know, you don't change anything when you're the victim. You don't fix anything. You have no control when you're the victim. And at the point that you stop being the victim, you find a way to change your perspective on you're not the victim. You're going to change up. You're going to change what you can to change the circumstances, and things will change. And that's what, you know, I had to stop thinking that the world was going to change for me, and I started to have to, you know, change for the world. I'm going to take a risk here and say that Lieutenant Johnson, Sergeant Kennefic, and Corpsman Layton would never have wanted you to spend your life blaming yourself, feeling awful, calling yourself evil. They would have wanted you out there enjoying yourself, having love, having your family, until you can, as they said, see them on the flip side. Well, that was it, right? You know, I used to wear those bracelets around my wrists, and those memorial bracelets. When I get to go pick my kids up, you know, we're week on, week off. And when I get to walk in that school and I get to see my kids after a week, and they come running down that hallway and they come screaming, Dad, you know, that you look forward to those moments, right? Like those are the moments that melt your heart. And I'll never forget one day I reached down to go grab Sailor. And when I did, like, all the joy that I felt was instantly gone when I laid eyes on the memorial bracelet. Mm. And after that, I threw them away. And I said I'd never wear them again. And the one thing I know for certain is that any amount of joy that I lose because of my teammates, there's no chance they would have wanted that.
That's right.
They died so that we could all do this, right? Like, they died so that I could live the life that I can. They died so you can live the life that you can. And they died so that we can all go out and live a life. And I just believe that any day that I don't make the most of the day and I don't enjoy it and I don't soak it up and I don't appreciate it, I'm doing nothing but spitting on their sacrifices. My obligation to them is to go out and live a life that's worthy of their sacrifices. And that's what I try to do.
I know you had the opportunity to go visit Ground Zero and the site of the Twin Towers with another Marine. And when you were there, an iron worker, I guess, handed you a silver marker, and you had the chance to write on a girder.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what you wrote?
Yeah, so this was kind of cool. Like, right after the ceremony, right after the Medal of Honor ceremony, I came to New York, and and so, they were giving us a tour of the World Trade Center, or the new World Trade Center, and, they were still building it. And I looked over at one of the iron workers was a Marine, and I said, hey, man, like, I want to go up to the top. And he said, well, can you climb a ladder? And I was like, well, yeah, of course. And so we kind of bounced off from the tour and climbed this ladder, and he climbed me all the way up to the top of this thing. Literally, I was standing on top of the floor that they were on, and it was just steel going up, as like there was nothing above me. And it was such a cool moment. And I wrote FTWGA on the iron, and it stood for those who gave all. And that was what it was about. And a cool part to follow on to that story is after it was completed, I came down and went up to the top and got out, and the tower that's on top of it. It's like it's on top of the new World Trade Center. Mm-hmm. So I looked at it was another guy who was there at that time. I don't think it was the same guy, but I asked him. I said, hey, where's the highest point on this that's signed? And he said, well, we signed the lightning rod on top. We signed it before they put it up there.
Oh. And
I said, well, I want to go. I want to sign it. And he handed me a vest, like one of their safety harnesses. And he said, well, the only way you can get there is if you climb that ladder, and it's over 300 feet tall.
Oh.
And so I spent the next 4 hours climbing the ladder all the way up. And so I climbed all the way to the top above those lights that flash. I climbed all the way up. I got videos and pictures. And I signed the lightning rod, and I put all my teammates' names on the lightning rod. And I put a quote, or I just put a little saying there. I won't quote it, but I just said, let this tower represent, what we are and what we'll come back as, to any of our enemies that try to challenge us.
Wow. What we are and what we'll come back as. And that's where your story is now, how you've come back after having given all. On behalf of a grateful nation, thank you for your service. Thank you for telling your story, and thank you for leading the life you have thus far. So many more great, great chapters to come. It's obvious, and we're lucky to have you. You're a national treasure. Please keep talking, and please keep reaching out, and please don't ever let yourself get too low without calling, because we're all here for you.
No, thank you all so much. I really appreciate you.
So much love, so much respect. All the best to you. Wow, what a guy. What a man. That story is so moving. It's like, it's hard to believe we go about our days and things like that happen, and men like that are walking around and we don't think about them or it, right? Like, we worry about such minutia. We get ourselves worked up over such nonsense. And you've got real live men like Dakota Meyer there available to talk about his experiences and life lessons, and you haven't tapped into it. I'm so glad that he let us today, and I'm honored to be able to bring you a guy like that this Memorial Day weekend. I hope you think about him, and I hope you think about those who did not survive the Battle of Ganjgal and all of our lost service personnel in the Iraq and Afghanistan wars, and those that came before, those who died for our freedom, right? For our freedom.